again, want to welcome everybody to our Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we have this webinar focusing on stopping the violence in America. We've had incredible speakers from every walks of life, from we call the religious leaders and the law enforcement. We've had mayors on here. We've had just everyday people who felt a call to deal with the violence in America. We originally started it with dealing with gun violence. And after a few episodes, we realized that it's not only gun violence, there is some root causes that we have to go into to see what stems, what causes people to pick up that inanimate object and then hurt their fellow brother or fellow sister. And we've come up with some incredible informations and insights from the various speakers. Today, we've had one young man that was supposed to come on, but he couldn't make it. And his name was Joshua Jones. He leads a youth violence prevention program in Mobile, Alabama, but he could not come. He will come very soon in some subsequent episodes. But today we thought, because in 2003, we've had so many prolific leaders, and one of our religious leaders who came on and made a huge indent in his community. He has an impressive resume, but more important than his resume is his actions and those things that he has done that are proven, that are sustainable, and that have been able to measure his results. And that is Dr. Jim Bostic. Our Jim Bostic is a leader who has been working with gang violence, and he found a way to curb the gang violence in upstate New York with a system that he created. So without any further ado, we'd like to ask Dr. Val, we'll have a recording, and then after the recording, we'll have a brief discussion about those things that he has done that are incredible, that will move your heart and has moved our hearts previously. So we want to welcome him, and we want to thank everybody for your diligence, and your support is incredible for this webinar on a weekly basis. So without any further ado, thank you so much. And we ask that EJ or Nadia, if you can start the video.
But greetings to each of you in the name of the Almighty God. I am honored to be or have the opportunity to speak to you about this issue that has plagued our inner cities for much too long, and to share with you some of the insights that I have gained having been intimately involved in this work for a number of years. The agency, the Nepahang Community Center, which I was executive director of for the last 28 years, really, I just retired from. So I turned my full attention to my church and obviously the work of the community, which never stops. So to get directly into the conversation regarding gangs and gang violence, it is an issue that is destroying the fabric of urban America. It is an issue that we have witnessed far too many of our young men in particular, and in some cases young women, who have been cut down much too early in their life as a result of the violence that is connected with this culture. So here in the city of Yonkers, where I live and work, gang violence started very slowly but began to build momentum. We border, as you know, the Bronx. And so whatever plagues New York City is going to eventually hit our community. And so the area where my agency works, where my agency is located, 3 out of every 4 homes is a single parent home. It's the highest poverty area in all of New York State outside of the South Bronx. It had the second or third highest dropout rate, and the list of negative data and statistics that are connected with that or this quadrant of the city of Yonkers could rival any community almost in the United States, which was a recipe for violence and a recipe for problems within your community. Everything from poverty to gang violence and everything in between, we inhabited in our community. And so since our agency sits right smack in the heart of it, I felt like there was something that had to be done. The gang violence had escalated to a level that was unacceptable. Any level is unacceptable. But we begin to see bodies, meaning young men who lost their life 2 and 3 every single week. And we went to the mayor and we went to the police commissioner to talk to them about it. And they were willing to admit that there was a problem. And the reason being is because in the general area where the problem existed, they were in the throes of a major redevelopment of that part of Yonkers. So they could not, on the one hand, draw new business into our community, and on the other hand, have a major crime problem. So they downplayed the gang problem, and all that did was cause it to continue to grow and to persist. So I had to take aggressive measures, and what I did was I called the News 12. And I said, listen, you guys are reporting gang problems every weekend, and why don't you have a special on gang violence in our community? And they thought it was a great idea. And I said, I'll host it at my facility. And so we had a gang summit at the Rappahannock Community Center, hosted by News 12, and invited the public to attend. It was a live 1-hour coverage of the problem. And you had mothers who had just lost their sons that came and spoke out as part of this coverage. And you had actual gang members that were bold enough to come and to speak out also on television. It far exceeded my goal and my objective, which was to bring it to the public's attention and to the attention of government and our city leaders, to the point that they were forced to have to do something. Literally the very next day after the coverage happened, I was getting all kinds of calls. Well, what can we do? What should we do? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now that I had their attention, I created what we call the City of Yonkers Violence and Gang Prevention Coalition. One of the things I realized, I was also a former teacher and a principal. And one of the things I realized was that there was no single entity within our community that could resolve this problem in and of themselves. This was a problem that was going to require an entire community to participate in. So we created the City of Yonkers Violence and Gang Prevention Coalition, and we invited literally every entity in our community. We invited the mayor and his representatives, the commissioner of police, the Westchester County District Attorney and their staff. We invited the business community that was affected by this culture that had ravaged the streets of Yonkers. We invited private citizens and parents to come and to participate at this forum. And we, at this committee or creation of this coalition, and they all responded. And we decided that we were going to meet every month on the third Wednesday of every month and begin to formalize a strategy that we could use to begin to attack this problem from a number of different levels. So, for example, the superintendent of schools and his staff, we got them to agree for us to be able to go into the schools and do what we call empowerment assemblies. We broke the assemblies down into all male and then all female assemblies. And I put together a team, including myself, of persons that would go into the schools and speak to just all boys. I put together another team of females that were very active in the community and had some experience in these kinds of matters, that would go in and talk to all the girls. And we came at these young men and young women very raw. We didn't hold back. And we began to talk to them about the downside of this gang culture. We began to demystify all of these things that had been told about gangs by these guys out in the streets, and how they were being used as young students to carry weapons and all of these kinds of things because they could not be prosecuted in the same way that a young adult could be, and how they were being used as pawns for these gang leaders. We told them that they're not your family as they have told you they are. If you think that they are, ask any gang member that went to jail and then came back out of jail. Ask them how many of their family members, meaning gang members, came and visited them inside the correctional facility. And I can promise you, none of them did. How many offered to bail them out? None of them did. But yet they proclaimed to be your family. As a matter of fact, when they got arrested by the police, asked them what happened to the other gang members that were around them when the police showed up. They all disappeared and they left you holding the bag. Family doesn't do that. And so we began to really get into their heads. And it really began to sink in and have an effect on our young people. That was in the school systems. We then had the pastors begin to talk about this over the pulpits on Sunday when they had the attention of their parishioners. And so they began to attack the issue from the standpoint that parents need to become more intimately involved in the life of their child and know what their child is doing, know who they're associating with, and don't let them have a room in your house that's off limits to you. Because there could be weapons in there, there could be all kinds of things happening. Don't let them have any electronic equipment that you don't have access to, because they could be communicating with people that are detrimental to the welfare and the safety of your child. So we began to attack it from the parents' perspective and began to really get into their heads. And usually, if it comes from the pulpit and it's coming from the pastor, usually it gets the attention of those, parishioners. And so then we had to deal, unfortunately, with law enforcement. Those young people who we could not save, and we did not want to lose anybody to incarceration, but those young people who we could not save, we had to get them off the streets because they were harmful to themselves and harmful unto others. And so we enlisted not only the police department, but the FBI. And one of the gangs that we were dealing with in Yonkers that was very a notorious ruthless gang, the FBI had to take 33 of their members off the street. Excuse me. The least amount of time that any one of those people had was 25 to life. That's the least amount. The maximum amount for one young man was 145 years in prison with no possibility of parole. And that's because of the dead bodies he had attached to his name. That was from, in the business community, we enlisted them for the purposes of providing summer jobs and providing meaningful work experiences for a lot of these young people who are looking for jobs and can't find it. And as a result, find themselves being lured into this other lifestyle because they can't find a meaningful job. Then the other thing that we did was, and this did not make my wife very happy, but I arranged to have a gang summit with the 35 top gang leaders of all rival gangs on their territory at whatever time they designated. And it would just be myself and one other of my partners, which is the pastor here in Yonkers. And we were given a date and a time of 2 o'clock in the morning in an undisclosed location, which we went to. And all 35 of the gang leaders showed up. Every single one of them, other than me and Bishop Hassel, was strapped, with meaning they were carrying weapons because they were all from rival gangs and they didn't trust each other. And we met with the gangs and the gang leaders, rather. And, you know, I had this was the one shot, well, I thought it was a one-shot deal where I may not get this opportunity again. And so I basically was very candid with them. You know, we told them that, number one, what they were doing was appalling. They was destroying the life of a whole other generation of young people. And I told them, if young men decide that they want to go into your gangs of their own free will, I'm opposed to it, but that's a choice that those young men made. But if you are intimidating young men, threatening to take their life if they don't join your gang, and we find out, and I find out about it, I don't want you to hear this from anybody else. I'm looking you in the face and I'm telling you, I'm turning you into the FBI, into the police, myself. So you don't have to hear it in the room or on the street. Of course, my partner was kicking me in the leg underneath the table, but I felt like it was my one shot deal, and I had to say what I had to say. I said, but let me do this. I'm not asking you to give up something without gaining something on the other side of the table. So what is it that you guys need in order to get out of this lifestyle? And one of the young men said to me, Dr. Bostic, look around this table. Everyone here is a father and an ex-con, and none of us can get meaningful employment. So we have to survive just like you do. So we're going to survive one way or the other. That's an argument that's hard to come back against, to be perfectly honest with you. So we basically assured them that if we did everything in our power to get them the jobs that they need, would they in fact get out of this lifestyle? And the majority, not all of them, which is that group that ended up getting locked up by the feds, the majority of them said, if you get us the jobs, we'll put down the weapons and we'll walk away from this lifestyle. And so that's what I did. And that's what Bishop Hassel did. We went about to try to secure meaningful employment where these guys could make a decent wage, where they could provide some level of support to their children and families, and walk around with a level of respectability without resorting to violence and gangs. The other thing that happened was the singular most notorious gang leader in the city of Yonkers, because Yonkers had a gang problem based on territory and boundaries. So if you cross one boundary, if you could just live on one side of the street, but you cross that other side of the street, you were subject to be shot if you were, involved in that gang rivalry. So this young man, who was the most notorious gang leader in Yonkers, everybody knew it, including the police, got bold one day and crossed over into an area where he had no business crossing over into. He immediately got shot 5 times. But he survived the shooting, but was paralyzed, and he was down in Mount Sinai in Manhattan. And I took a camera and I went down and I visited him. And I said, listen, you have more influence than almost anybody in Yonkers in this lifestyle. I said, given what has happened to you, 2 things I'm asking you. Number one, your mother lives in the Bronx. Go live with your mom. Don't come back into the Yonkers community, because there's a hit out on you. And I can assure you, you won't last long. And particularly now that you're in the state that you're in. But you can do something special for this, for not only for our community, but for the young men in your gang and in other gangs. And that is, you can tell them to put their weapons down. That this lifestyle leads to nothing but death, imprisonment, and mayhem. So he agreed to do that. And I videotaped his whole statement on camera. And then I convened a second meeting at my facility. And it was only between 2 rival gangs, the worst, the 2 that had the biggest problem, one against the other. And they did come, and I showed them that video of the young man. And it had a very jarring effect on everybody that was there. The rivalry between the 2 gangs literally came to a conclusion. It stopped. And I think that his video had a lot to do with that. Unfortunately, he did not take heed to what I said. And when he came back out, he tried to get back into the same lifestyle, ended up in one of our apartment complexes here in Yonkers, and they found out that he was in the building, and they went up and they put 12 bullets in him this time, and they wanted to make sure that they took him out of here. And when that occurred, it brought a silence over the city of Yonkers in regards to that culture, you might say. So between all of those various different things that we were doing, also, as you know, I teach at the Westchester County Correctional Facility now for almost 30 years. And so many of the guys that I taught, up in the correctional facility, were coming right out of Yonkers. In fact, the majority of the people in the county correctional facility is from Yonkers. So I got to see a lot of them on the inside before they came back out. And I was able to work with those young men on the inside and help them while they were there. Some young men, we were able to get their GEDs. We got a partnership with the Manhattan College where they were willing, if those guys got their GED, to give them a full 4-year scholarship when they walk outside the gate. And so we were able to do that with a couple of the guys. The last thing that we did was you may have heard of President Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper program. So it's one of the most effective programs that I'm aware of. But what it basically does is it aligns a mentor with a young man that's going through problems and trouble. And so what I did is I brought the program to Yonkers. I got our mayor to agree to bring it to Yonkers. And we enlisted the Yonkers Guardians, which are the Black police officers, and the Yonkers Vulcans, which are the Black and Hispanic firefighters, to be mentors. And what we did is we identified the young men that were most challenged and most probable to be creating a problem or getting into a problem, and we assigned a Black police officer to them or a Black firefighter to them. And those relationships turned those young men around, I should say. And within the advent of all of those different strategies, Yonkers went from the worst gang problem of any city on the East Coast during a period of time to the second safest city of its kind in the United States of its size. And we had a 59% graduation rate from young men of color. And after a period of time, the graduation rate is now up above 90+%. So those strategies had a tremendous effect, but it was not any one of them. It was a collaboration of all of them working from various different perspectives that really touched the hearts of these young men and was able to get them to turn from that lifestyle that they were engaged in. And so Yonkers is not a perfect city now, but compared to what it was, people feel safe now to walk through their neighborhoods. At one point when we were at the height of the gang problem, people were afraid to come out because they were subject to being involved in getting a stray bullet shot or whatever the case may be at any time. And so it has changed the whole trajectory of our community and certainly our young men now, where they're looking forward to graduating from high school and going to college as opposed to getting engaged in those gang cultures. The other thing that the Obama Foundation and My Brother's Keeper program did is it allowed us to take groups of young students, male and female, on colleges to traditionally HBCU schools. So that's the Black colleges. And getting them out of Yonkers, off of their neighborhoods and out of their blocks, and letting them see a different side of our nation, and other students who, like themselves, were in college and doing great things, helped tremendously with our young people. And so that's how we really got a handle on this gang problem. But it took some work and it took some risks. Like I said, my wife wasn't happy that I was out at 2:00 in the morning meeting with gang members in a place she didn't even know, and couldn't reach me. But we had to do what we had to do. We took the Spirit of the Lord with us into the meeting, and we did so without any fear of retribution or anything else. And it worked. And Yonkers is a different community now. So let me stop there and entertain any thoughts or questions from you.
Thank you so much. Every time I listen to his presentation, it touches my heart because what you see is that if the right things are done with the right heart, then many of our young people are redeemable. And so what I want to do is uh, get everybody's feedback. And then I have some things to share as well. So let me just open it up for now and ask anyone for any of their feedback so that we can get a stimulating conversation going. Thank you.
Well, Reverend Oliver.
Yes, sir, John.
Yes. Going through and listening to this again is like, yeah, it's so many different things that they use, including going to the news station, getting a program done on the gangs and that, and going to schools and working there and having police officers help out in different ways and a brother's keeper program, all these things. Like I said, it's just all these things work together to make a difference. And of course, that's a big time to get all those things done at one time. But I think these I'm going to add to my list of things that we know can work, in other places too. So I think that's more. I got several things out of that this time that I didn't notice before. So yeah, that's kind of a special kind of a. I say all the different things work together. So that's kind of a way they got to do it. Have a multiple pronged approach. Not just a singular kind of a approach. So yeah, it takes a lot of help though to do that. So again, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I got from him also was that what he stressed with it wasn't just one thing. It was, like you said, a collaboration, strategies that they put together diligently. And then you can see what I called sustainable and measurable health change. It's just impressive because at the end, as he said, even, for example, the graduation rate was even for 59% in some of those at-risk communities is pretty impressive. But it went up to, what did he say, 90%?
Yeah.
90% graduation rate went up. That's incredible.
So
again, I would like to just reiterate my point is that we're redeemable. They are redeemable.
Amen.
So we have to really look. It's easy to look at these young people and accuse, and you can look at the family structure and accuse and make comments about them. But as I've always said, in each community, there are what they call it historical backgrounds and historical traumas that we all need to take in consideration that plays a critical part and a very important part in the behaviors of a lot of people. We remember General Bray. He saw his decline with offering what Dr. Bostic offered, and that was jobs.
Sure.
There was jobs there. So anyway, thank you so much. We will talk a little bit about that. I have some conclusion remark. I see Bruce Sucher. Thank you. Welcome, Bruce.
Hey, Dr. Bostic, thank you so much for an excellent presentation. I'll preface my remarks by saying I live in Chicago. I taught in the inner city here. I've lived here all my life, but I lived for 3 or 4 years in New York and did spend time in Yonkers and that area. My problem personally is I read an article a couple weeks ago in the paper written by a African-American professor who had just been hired to lead one of the anti-poverty groups. And I'd never read a letter like his. I'll preface by saying I had about 30 kids in my classes in an all Black school, of which one had both birth parents at home. And this professor basically said that if you want to stop violence in Chicago, you've got to focus on the family, and especially the two-parent family. And you know, I know just about everything except that's one thing I don't know. I don't know how to change that situation. In Chicago, so many people are doing so many good things. We had a pastor that did a fast on the roof of his house until enough money could be raised to build a youth center. We have a famous Catholic radical priest named Father Michael Pfleger, who it seems about every other week is doing a march to stop violence through the city. But I think that all of these ideas, which are great ideas, are all trying to deal with the symptoms rather than the cause. You know, I grew up in a family with one brother and two parents, and I know that they barely survived until we both moved out. And that's two parents and two kids. So how in the world can a single parent possibly, you know, especially let's say the best ones are going to be at work every day when the kid comes home? My final point, I had an amazing experience with a minister in one of the high rises in Chicago. And he said to me, he felt the problem was that the kids had no hope. That the kids in the projects, the only people that they saw who had ever made it in life were the drug dealers who had, you know, fancy gold chains and fancy cars. And, you know, how, you know, all the stories, Professor, about how they give a 7-year-old $10 to deliver some drugs somewhere. And he's never seen $10 in his life. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I'll conclude by saying one of our most outstanding congressmen in America is Danny Davis. His district in Chicago represents downtown Chicago, which is the richest congressional district in America. And it goes out to the west side in Austin, which is one of the poorest districts. And Congressman Davis, his pet project is to get ex-offenders, when they get out of prison, help them get jobs to get into society in a normal, you know, life. But how sad Chicago! I love Chicago. It's a beautiful city, but people are afraid to come here. And I think the government doesn't really care because it's all black on black violence, and it's all in the, you know, in the ghetto. So that it doesn't really affect them because what they care about is tourism. Now, as these smash and grab things start happening down Michigan Avenue, maybe things will change. But even our beloved President Barack Obama, who I was friends with when he was a state senator, and I had Michelle come to one of our prayer breakfasts. But if you ask the average African American, there's such a thing as average, but if you ask an African American in Chicago if their life was any better after 8 years of President Obama, they would unhesitatingly say no. And in fact, today they're building the Barack Obama Presidential Library in an area which is displacing all of the African Americans who lived in that area and will not be able to afford to, you know, move back after they leave. So anyway, I'm throwing out a whole bunch of things, but the essence of what I'm saying is we have to deal with the cause, which is the breakdown of the family, which is the single parent family. And honestly, even with 2 master's degree and a doctorate, I don't know how to do that. But again, thank you so much for what you're doing in New York. I love New York. I love Yonkers. And thank you for your presentation.
Not here video, but thank you so much. You know, I like to address what you just said from this vantage point. I always say we have to go back to root causes. What does Black Americans or Hispanic or those who are deemed with those statistics, are they inherently one prone to just one parent home? Are they inherently prone, the men are prone to not to be fathers of their children? And this is another point that I look at, and then I say, no, they're not. They're not inherently. So you have to go to the root causes. 1960, as I've always said, and then there's statistics that I have to bring out, that there were two parent homes intact within the Black community was prevailing. When the government decided they wanted to help these poor, poverty-stricken Black people, they began to introduce what we call welfare. And that welfare system played an intricate role in guiding the mom and dad, and it became a problem that you begin to create a generation after generation of no fathers in the home. Now, I have to go back, and I admire Moynihan's report, because he said if our government continues to promote this within those communities, this is what you would get. So in the 1960s, when you read what he said, what we will get is exactly what Dr. Bostic just said. You know, those type of things. Now, secondly, there are several two-parent homes within the Black community. As you know, I always say my dad. Okay, I'm really not an anomaly. There's several out there. My dad used to say one thing, because he was a social worker, and actually Bruce knew him before Bruce knew me. And he used to always say this to my mom and myself and our family. He said, if the system of the government, and you said it so correct, many times they don't care because it is Black on Black crime. But if they really cared about solving the problem and promoting the two-family home, then if the system in our media system would promote on a daily basis, back when these statistics were out in the 70s, of all the Black homes that had a father, a two-parent home, and promote that every day as they promote the dysfunction of these families. He said that would be subliminally play a very strategic, I like the word that Dr. Bostic used, role in the psyche of these communities, right? Then you have all these other entities out there that are not only for the Black community, but could you imagine the Black community or these at-risk communities, how much more they're affected, and they're affecting America as a whole, who are downplaying the two-parent home, who are downplaying, family values. So that not only the Black community is affected, but the communities at large in America are becoming affected. So imagine them who don't have the same net, if you will, the same safety nets as other communities might have, that they're subjected to even more promotions and propaganda out there, downplaying and downgrading two-parent homes. So we have to look at what is one of the root causes. And I think we strategically have to look at, as I said before, I always remember that. And it's true. Then why, I asked the question, why does the media or our system not playing a more critical role in helping to advance and to promote more fathers in the home? My last point is, one of our speakers, I can't think of his name, God forgive me, but I had a private conversation with him. And he said what he did was he started a program in which Bruce, to answer part of Bruce's question, he said, I started a program, a recidivism program, in which this program was geared toward young African-American men coming out of prison to help them understand their responsibility to their family, to go back into their family structures, play a central role in their children's lives. He said that the program became very successful. The recidivism rate dropped. Men in the homes started to prevail. All of a sudden, the government cut the money from the program. Just asking me, Reverend Oliver, why would they do that if they saw the results? I don't know. Open for discussion. Who would like to share something?
I have an idea, Dr. Oliver.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of influence in our government from, for lack of a better term, communist groups who are trying to destroy America. And that's why they found out this program was working. They cut it out right away. That's my opinion. From my point of view.
Well, you might not be way off. You might be on a very strategic or on track.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is.
So much.
And, there's so many things that compounds these ill behaviors and what I called collateral damage and dysfunctional behaviors that are out there, not only in the Black community, but in all our communities at large. Before you come on, Bruce, but one of the things that I did like what he shared and he categorized it, he started off with, of course, inviting all segments of society, the communities, got the gangs involved, he got the parents involved, through inviting all the public members, and then he went and got the mayor involved, and the district attorney involved, and the business community involved, and he just went on and on. And then he started with what I was impressed with the schools. And then they set up what they call what he call empowerment assembly. I thought was very powerful. And he separate the boys from the girls, which I thought was incredible and completely imperative. And got those people who were able to address those kids, and those kids can also identify with what they're saying, especially the girls and the boys, And there they began to see some results. Then he went to the pastors. And as he's correct, the pastors play a very critical role in getting the parents and in the general public to hear what is necessary and what is needed. And then he went to the law enforcement. And I like what he was sharing, that, you know, what I call the collateral damage making many times, because they are so impaled with, they're incorrigible at some point, incorrigible, then it's not easy for them to change it. Sometimes you might have to just take them off the street. But there are other ones out there that are influenced by them that are redeemable. So with that said, I'd like to continuously to open up the floor. Bruce, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, just I'm responding to one thing you said, and I really appreciate what your comments about welfare and everything. I think it was beautifully said, and again, you're backing up what I said too, that we have to deal with the root causes. But interesting to this last point, I don't know if you guys listen to YouTube music. I do. And the thing about it is very interesting is after every song, unless you pay for premium, you're going to get a commercial. And it's not just a simple commercial, it's a long commercial dealing with the the curing of everything from diabetes to ER to everything else. But interesting, over and over, the story goes on that when this guy came and he discovered a cure for something, the government got on his case and he couldn't sell it. I remember the story of the guy that invented the intermittent windshield wipers, and GM completely, slammed it. Recently, he won the case, but GM slammed it down for years. The government, sadly, and I don't think it matters what party, is incredibly corrupt when it comes to business and things like that. I of course don't want to get into that right now, but to me, it didn't surprise me that the government ended this great idea. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I agree. I just, you know, just this new program that's headed by one of the rap singers, rap artists. His name is DT or TT, all these incredible, interesting names. And one other rapper is called Rick Ross. And this young rapper, he started to address his fellow rappers about all of the words and the lyrics of their songs, just promoting more violence and more hate and more killing of, black on black crime. And I was really impressed with what he was sharing. So he's starting a movement, stopping the violence within the lyrics of our songs, And so I signed up, and he's calling it a movement. And so he did prick the conscience of one other gentleman that in one of his last songs that are just promoting more violence and violence, and he responded, okay, yes, you're right. I think we have to relook at those things. And I think those are the things that will play a critical role. And it reminded me of what Dr. Bostic had shared with that young man who was hard-headed, but he still had influence over hundreds of young men and women in those communities, just by virtue of his voice, probably with a combination of all the other programs that were going on that helped. But what he shared with those people helped two gangs just put their guns down and try to see if they can work together and get their own personal lives together. So one of the things that I think that I appreciate about this new movement of rap artists is addressing their fellow rap brothers and sisters, that we cannot continuously to think that we're going to build a community, help a community by allowing our words and our lyrics to subliminally play an intricate role in the violence in those communities. So I just signed up today. Hopefully, I would like to get them on this video, our webinar, to discuss that. And that also segues into the young man that I wanted to have on. He's a leader of the youth violent prevention program in Mobile, Alabama. He's on the website. You can, not a website, but on the internet. You can see him. His name is Joshua Jones. I would have him on soon. And then this young guy who is a DJ or a rap artist, DT or D1 or one of those kind of names. But anyway, from listening to Dr. Bostic, I think that now we are preparing to have our own conference. How we at UPF can play an intricate role in bringing all those best practices into one room and discuss and make it a national conference where, like he said, we'll call out the parents, we'll call out government officials, we'll call out officers, law enforcement, we'll call out those gang members that are willing to come, those young people who are afraid to say it, but they're sick and tired of living in those environments, and see how we can all collectively work together and come together and use those best practices, not in just one community, but on a national level, that it will be a national call, that then the federal government will be able to hear a national voice of best practices that are out there that you cannot and will not ignore. So we look forward to that coming up. And I would just like to say, I sent out an email, but all of those people, brothers and sisters who would like to have a strategic call with me the end of this week, please send me an email. And if you like I said, if you send me an email, then I will send a Zoom link, and then we can all get together, begin to discuss the way forward and the strategic plan to how to facilitate, if you will, this national conference that we will have this year, bringing, all these extraordinary speakers that have results and deal with those. I think we can also, as Bruce said, I think one of our key components is that we can address it from the family value standpoint. We can make certain presentations to help with it as well. Oh, I see Ray McCready. I see that your hand's up. Did you want to say something before we end?
Oh, thank you, Reverend Alder. I appreciate it. All I want to say is I've taken off from John O'Connor and my elder brother, Bruce Sucher. In some aspects, I had just taken the class, finished it in December with Thomas Ward, Professor Thomas Ward. And it was fascinating. I learned a lot. One thing was that there's not only the Marxist-Leninist branch, there's something called Western Marxism, which actually developed through something called, you can look it up on the New World Encyclopedia, called the Frankfurt School. And that one, he felt, and he told us in the class, he had about 60 people, more than half of them were basically online students, that the Western Marxism was much more damaging because, as the co-founder of UPF says, Mother Moon, that culture is so critical. Western Marxism has really influenced the culture in the Western world through humanism, denying absolute values, and it's a whole study, but it's been so effective in destroying a lot of, because it all comes out of culture. So when you kind of poo-poo the old-fashioned values, then if you think it's hip or cool to be progressive, and then you get sucked. It's kind of like the old siren song or the old deceitful lie. Yeah, you want to go this way. But that actually, I feel, has a lot to do with it. This influence of postmodernism and humanism, which actually there's the Humanist Manifesto of 1933. It basically disregards God, says there ain't no absolute values anyway, and it's all whatever your standpoint is. So I just thought I want to throw that in there because I appreciate Professor Ward for sharing that with us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't watch on this particular webinar, but I agree with you. I've done my own studies on how the left is playing a critical role within the Black American community. Even if you go back to the what they call it, the decolonization period, when the African countries got their independence, many of them led toward what? Socialism. Right. So socialism, and the left knows that whatever cultural values or whatever cultural aspects that those people bring to the global community, we have to weaken it, because they also have a very strong cultural values that play a critical role in the betterment of society. So we can break down certain values within those societies. Then we could use them as what? Pawns. Okay. Just like Bostic said, that these young kids, gang members, are using those people, those young ones, as pawns. They really don't care about it. There's nefarious agendas behind all of it. You see, so I know that there are nefarious agendas to keep them as collateral damage. You see, if you keep them in collateral damage, what you do is you egg and you promote more of ill feelings, right? Resentment, or whatever you want to call it. You
Right.
see, and so they will be used. The ultimate goal is to use them for the uprising, right? So there's a nefarious agenda that people don't see. And so I understand that there is a left out there that is playing a critical role, because I don't understand even the Black Lives Matter. They're talking about Black Lives Matter. It's a beautiful terminology. I understand it. But I know it's a nefarious agenda that has nothing to do with the true rise and the true reconstruction of a people. Because in your hometown, in your city, when I was there watching the uprisings that was going on, they might have targeted the law enforcement, which law enforcement are not pure by a long shot, many ones, but many of them are. But they were focusing on that because they needed an uprising. But when in the same street that you are in your area, Ray, in Washington,
Yeah, Seattle.
Seattle, when those kids on that same street have a black club, and they came out and they killed 4 or 5 those are black kids, black on black crime, no one was hollering or protesting about why are these black kids killing one another. How can we heal that? I didn't hear Black Lives Matter deal with that.
Right.
So that already told me there's a nefarious agenda behind them. They don't want to deal with the root cause why this black on black crime is also prevailing. But they wanted to harper on, the police officers, who are white police officers or law enforcement, who have killed our brother, what was his name?
George Floyd.
Yeah, George Floyd.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I understand. I'm not depleting or deleting or giving an excuse for that behavior, because that behavior needs to be addressed. But if you want to address that, please address the black on black crime, right? And where the root cause of that is. You need to come and you need to help heal that. And why are they doing that? And there's reasons behind that. So I agree with John, yourself, and think that there is a strong left, and they have been reading up on it. They've been trying to penetrate. You know where they're trying to penetrate the most? And they've been doing it since the Du Bois. They used him as their emissary. And that is, they started to penetrate the African-American church. They have to go in and penetrate them to weaken their moral center, because I tell you, and I don't want to get too much in it, but if you go back to San Francisco, back when they were trying to promote and pass laws, same-sex marriage, who stopped it? Go to back in your research. Who stopped it? It was the Black American, the African American church who stopped it back then. So the left knows our power and our influence on both sides. So anyway, God bless you, everyone. I don't like to get too much in it with the website, the webinar, Stop Your Violence. I try to keep it to myself, but I thought that we need to deal with certain things as well as we go forward and trying to build this this national awareness conference, Stopping the Violence in America. Again, all those who are willing or would like to share in our strategic plan in facilitating this conference, please send me an email.
Reverend Oliver, I'll send you an email, a copy of today's program, just a summary, the raw summary. It'll be all right.
Okay, great. That's excellent. Thank you so much, John. Those things are quite helpful.
Good.
All right. God bless everyone. Nadia, thank you always. Don, Ray, and Bruce, always thank you. And we'll see you guys next week. Yeah, more to come.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
God bless.
God bless you. See you.
Thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you,
excellent.
Nadia. Thank you. God bless.
Happy New Year,
Welcome.
Thank you,
everybody.
John Healy.
Yes, great. Let's do
Thanks
it.
again.